Hello, my name is Rocket, and you are watching Rocket in Vermont. Today, I want to talk about cannabis. You may know cannabis by any number of street names, but the Vermont State Legislature has chosen to standardize it with the universal term cannabis. Cannabis. So from here on out, that's what I'll be referring it to. Now, there's a big vote coming up. There's new legislation, and many towns around the state of Vermont are voting on this in the town meetings next month. And honestly, I was a little bit confused by the information being tossed around. So I decided to do a deep dive, do some research, and put together this video, which I hope will help you clarify the conversation around cannabis. There are 3 ways for an adult to legally obtain cannabis in the state of Vermont. The first is medically, the second is to grow your own, and the third is to be gifted. Medically, there might be a number of ways that you qualify for a medical card. Anyone with a medical card can obtain medical cannabis at one of 7 dispensaries around the state. Now, the benefits of doing this are that you obviously don't have to grow it yourself. You can be sure that the product is safe because they lab test it, and also that it's tax-free. As far as growing it yourself or getting cannabis gifted to you, there are certain limits that are set by the state, but within those limits, you as an adult, which is defined as 21 plus, are able to legally possess cannabis both on your person and in your home. Now, the Vermont Legislature has created something called the Cannabis Control Board. This is new because cannabis used to be seen by the Department of Public Safety, which is sort of like an interesting and odd choice, but when medical cannabis became a thing, when it became legal, there was no oversight board, there was no institution in place to be able to oversee it. Now there is. The Cannabis Control Board is responsible for overseeing the license process. Now there are 5 different licenses that correspond to the different market segments of cannabis. So there's cultivation, wholesaling, lab testing, product manufacturing, and that's kind of like brownies, gummies, cookies, and then retail. A wrinkle is that there is actually a 6th license, just not one that anyone can apply for. That license is called the integrated license and basically encompasses all these previous 5 segments. We can't apply for those licenses because they're already held by the licensees of the medical dispensaries. The reason for this is that when medical cannabis became legal in Vermont, these companies needed a way to safely grow and obtain cannabis to serve their customers. And because there was no industry around cannabis, they needed to be able to do all these things. It's not relevant because the everyday Vermont entrepreneur cannot apply for it. It is relevant because of what we're about to talk about soon. Before we move to the next point, we have to do some quick numbers. There are 5 different licenses, like specific, imagine like a paper license for medical dispensaries. Each one of these licenses allows a licensee, which is a company that owns it, to open 2 dispensaries. So let me just do like 2, 5 licensees for a possible total 10 dispensary locations. Now, of those possible 10 locations, there are actually 7 dispensaries that are currently open, which just means that 3 of the licensees decided not to open their 2nd location. They still could, but at this point, there are only 7 dispensary locations based off of these 5 original integrated licenses. I know it's confusing, but we will get back to that. Let's get to the vote in March. The vote in March is being brought up town by town, and here's what happened. The state legislature knew that a lot of people might feel strongly about having retail adult use cannabis in their town. So what they wanted to do is, instead of sort of mandating it from above and forcing all towns to allow retail cannabis on their main street, they've allowed each town to basically vote to make it permissible. Now, quick clarification is, of the 5 license types, the only one that towns can vote on is retail, because there are already cultivation labs, product manufacturers. We all know this. It's all happening. It's just kind of happening on the DL, as they say. And the state legislature wanted to create this opportunity for anybody who was operating in the cannabis industry on the DL to get out of the DL and basically just be above board legal. This is only possible if they allow it statewide, and you can't let towns basically vote or deny that on a town-by-town basis. However, the one aspect of the cannabis industry, these segments, that does not exist already is obviously physical retail locations for adult use. So that is what the state legislature decided to allow and give each town the power to vote on. That's it. pretty simple. But here's where it gets complicated. A lot of the ballots may have same start language, and it might reference the integrated licensees. So let's get back to that. What's going on there? Basically, the Cannabis Control Board has a very specific timeline for when they are going to allow people to apply for licenses and when they're going to approve those licenses. And obviously you can't start your business until after you've been approved. Here's where it gets complicated. The state legislature said, listen, all these integrated licensees, they're ready to go. I mean, they've already been doing medical cannabis for a long time, and functionally speaking, it's no different to just open that up to adult use retail. So the legislature then said, well, why don't we just let integrated licensees begin retail operations in May? And my understanding is the primary motive behind this is that the Cannabis Control Board needs to fund itself through tax revenue. So there's not going to be any new taxes elsewhere that funds this. It has to come through the cannabis industry. So the sooner retail begins, the sooner it can start to fill its coffers and fund its own operations. So the incentive there is to let integrated licensees begin because, hey, you're already ready, right? The catch is that the Cannabis Control Board timeline for reviewing and approving retail licenses is not until September, October. So that's obviously customer traction, customer loyalty, and brand building. There's all these things where you say, like, listen, it seems a little bit unfair. Don't kill the messenger, me. But this whole conversation about the utility or the same start might be completely irrelevant to you, even if it's on your ballot. And I'll tell you why. The legislature, with good intent, has said that every retail license, cannabis license, is only good for one physical retail location. So anybody that applies, if you get approved, you can only open a single spot. In addition, the integrated licensees, of which there are 5, remember they each could have 2 dispensaries. However, that one retail limit also applies to them. So each of these licensees may only open up to one other retail location. My understanding is they can either choose to open it at a pre-existing medical location, in which case that becomes both a medical dispensary and an adult use retail location, whereas the other one stays medical, purely medical. Or they could say, hey, we have 2 dispensaries, medical dispensaries. We want to just keep those medical dispensaries. And then we are going to open a 3rd location, and that would be our retail location. Looking at all that math, you can see that basically there are fundamentally only up to 5 retail locations that could open through the integrated licensees. Most likely they're going to happen at the existing medical dispensaries, because why would you already have all the infrastructure there, right? Like, why would you open up a 2nd spot or a 3rd spot, right? Even if the integrated licensees said, no, we are going to actually not open our retail spot at our dispensaries, we're going to open a 3rd location. And there might be reasons why, but let's not talk about that. So they might do that. There can still only be a maximum of 5 retail operations that open in May. I think we can guess within, reasonable certainty whether or not a given town is going to be targeted or identified as a place for one of those 5 retail locations to open up. Well, if this doesn't apply to my town, why am I seeing same start language on the ballot? Because that is very confusing. And the reason is this: symbolism. I think a lot of people who have put these initiatives on the ballots are trying to make the statement, look, we want to make sure that our values are seen clearly, which is that we believe that all the cannabis entrepreneurs should have a same start within our community. I think that's really what it fundamentally comes down to. So to summarize all of this, basically it comes down to the first primary question, which is, do you want to allow physical adult use retail cannabis in your town? Yes or no? The second question, which would be same start, may not be relevant. But what it means is, should we force the integrated licensees to wait to open their retail location in our town if they chose our town? Should they be forced to wait until everyone can do this? Same start. It's actually a same start. I'm just doing this because that's the language, but it is same start. There is a final critique that I would like to address. I have heard a lot of commentary and critique about how allowing the integrated licensees to start first is fundamentally wrong or deeply unfair because they are multi-state corporations. So I looked into this, and my understanding is that all of the companies that own these dispensary licenses, these integrated licenses, they started as locally owned Vermont companies, but over the course of the years of medical dispensaries being legal, they have all sold or merged with larger corporations that are multi-state operations, meaning multiple states in the US, or even multinational corporations. I think one of them is merged with a company in Toronto or something like that. So while these companies absolutely were locally owned Vermont companies, and in some degree might still be, they are also all at least partially, if not totally, owned by out-of-state interests as well. All right, everyone, that concludes the entire conversation around Vermont cannabis as I understand. I hope this video was useful in helping you clarify what the heck is going on in the ballots this March. You know, I tried my best, but it's possible that I missed something or I misstated something. And if that's the case, please provide comments and references. References are crucial below. The one thing that I would really ask is that I have no interest in the comment sections of my videos becoming like a battleground, a political battleground. I kind of feel like that's what family dinners are for. No, but seriously, if you disagree with someone in the comments, please just be civil. I mean, what else is there to say about that? If you enjoyed this video and you would like to follow along, you can like the video, like the channel, subscribe. The internet's been around long enough that I think you know what to do. Again, my name is Rocket. You're watching Rocket in Vermont. I appreciate your time here. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Not gonna lie, that was a toughie.